Hello and welcome to another episode of the Help Is Here podcast, brought to you by the Beyond Compulsion Academy. For a long time, I was dealing with urges incorrectly, and I got really close to dealing with them in the right way. But these sexual urges just kept on coming up and up and up, and no matter how much I tried, I'd always end up relapsing. And when I relapsed, I just felt so much shame, frustrated, anxiety, just like, how have I ended up here again? After trying to quit literally hundreds of times. Like, what is wrong with me? How does this problem just keep on persisting, right? So it was really annoying. And what I'm going to do in this video is play an earlier one of my videos from about 2 years ago, where I talk about dealing with urges in a way which a lot of people are now talking about, which is kind of this mindful approach. And I think it can work to some extent, but what I'm going to do is explain why ultimately it will still lead to people relapsing and what to do instead. So let's get right into it. I'll start off by playing this old video of mine and then we'll talk through what to do instead, okay?
And if you can accept it, acknowledge it, just think, all right, what is this sensation? How does it feel in my head? Where does this sensation actually occur in my body? Ask those sort of questions. How did this even happen? Why do I feel like this? Become intrigued, inquisitive about that sensation.
Okay, so yeah, in this earlier video about 2 years ago now, I was talking about getting really intrigued, inquisitive about sexual urges. And it sounds really nice, it sounds good, but ultimately, all this confusion that was going on wouldn't actually help me. You know, I would still relapse after a certain period of time. Now, I do agree that what we want to do is start off by accepting that we're going to have these sexual urges. It is completely true that if we resist sexual urges, they're just going to keep on coming back and back and back, and that's going to lead to a ton of frustration, and eventually we're going to go, you know, fuck it, I want to engage, and we're going to engage. So what we want to do is, start off by accepting that wanting. It's really critical, but I think what we need to do as well is understand that compulsive desire just keeps on coming up and up and up, and it's something where you want to do it and you're unable to stop doing it, and it's on your mind a lot more than people think as well. Even if that desire is in the form of, I don't want to do this thing, you're still thinking about the thing. It's compulsive, okay? So yes, let's accept that we're going to experience these urges, absolutely. But what we don't want to do is go around in circles, asking ourselves all these questions and having all this curiosity, because what we're doing in those moments is just letting the addicted part of our mind completely take control and spin us into a state of helplessness where we're so unsure of ourselves that eventually we go, fuck it, let's engage in porn. So let's look at these questions that I used to ask myself, you know, or try and ask myself. What is this sensation? How does it feel in my head? Where does this sensation occur in my body? How did this happen? Why do I feel like this, right? So all these questions sounds really good, sounds really productive, sounds very mindful, but it's just the addicted part of the mind posing as the rational part of your mind. And where these questions would always lead me is to basically things like, well, when are these feelings going to end? And how do I get out of these feelings? And then I'd start to think, you know, I said about, you know, why did this happen? And why do I feel like this? You know, all of those sort of questions. Well, then I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe I can avoid that trigger next time, because maybe I've figured out, well, it happened because I'm tired, or it happened because my bedroom isn't tidy, or I didn't go to the gym today, or some other bullshit. So then eventually it goes, well, surely it's okay to just have a quick look, because, you know, next time I'll be able to avoid that trigger. Next time I'm going to work out. Next time I'm going to meditate. Next time I'm going to journal more that day, or do all these other self-improvement things which have literally nothing to do with addicting neural pathways. So I'd kind of think, yeah, you know what, maybe it's all right to just have a quick look, and then maybe I'll stop myself. I'm not going to actually fully engage in this behaviour. But then the addicted part of my mind says, well, I've already looked now, you know, looking a bit more, it's not going to hurt. And then it just keeps on spiralling and spiralling. Next thing you know, I'm binging, I'm edging, I'm looking at all this content, and I'm completely out of control, and I've just had a relapse. Shit. How did I end up here? Again. I've been trying to stop hundreds of times. But then I'm like, you know what? It's all right. I can learn from the mistake. Relapse is part of recovery. This is fine. So I tried to avoid the trigger again, but then the compulsive desire would come back up, and this cycle would just continue. And it'd go on and on and on, and I would literally relapse and just feel awful and so ashamed and frustrated and just exhausted with this cycle of trying to figure all this shit out, but always ending up relapsing again and again and again. And here's the reality of what's actually going on. The truth is, asking all these questions is just part of the addiction. All these questions going on, which seem very analytical and smart and intelligent, they're part of the addiction. This is the addictive part of the mind pretending to be the rational part of your mind and getting you into a place where actually you're feeling helpless, unsure of yourself, anxious, you're overthinking, you're overanalyzing everything, and you're just feeling awful. And then you want to get out of those feelings, right? You want to get out of those feelings, so eventually you end up relapsing. That's what would happen for me in the past. So what is the solution to all of this? What we need to do is actually get super strategic. We need some strategy here. We need to plan out exactly what we're going to do when we have urges in advance, instead of letting the addicted part of our mind take control in those moments. So let's think through these urges correctly. And when we think through them correctly, we change how we feel. We then change how we act. And we change these addictive neural pathways correctly. And then we get to embrace real, permanent mental freedom, where we no longer are thinking about this thing all the time, whether it's thinking about doing it, thinking about not doing it. We're no longer going around in these circles, right? So what have I done? Well, I got support and help because I realized that, I can't do this alone. I actually need somebody to tell me exactly what to do so I never feel unsure of myself. So got help from Mary Portis. She's worked in addiction recovery for over 35 years. And she gave me a very, very specific script, which is based on a lot of education on the addicted part of the mind. And a lot of that is based on both her experience of working in addiction recovery for a number of years, but also other people's experience of working in addiction recovery for a number of years before her. So it's been going on for a long time, actually. And what I did is I set up a very specific 5-fact script, which is based on the truth. And what this does is it actually engages the rational part of the mind, the prefrontal cortex, because what's going on is the rational part of the mind, when I had urges, basically, it feels like it's kind of disappeared. It's like this addicted part of the mind's just taken over in that moment. And that's why I would do these things I really, really didn't want to do. Okay. So we got to engage that rational part of the mind again, and asking yourself all these questions and spinning out into a state of helplessness, or maybe considering, do I go to the gym now? Do I go for a walk? Do I do all these other 100 things, That's all part of the addiction. So we need to actually know exactly what to do when we experience these urges, instead of being unsure and letting the addicted part of the mind take control. What connecting to the rational part of the mind when we're having the urges does, if we're able to actually think through this choice in the right way, based on the right knowledge, based on the actual truth about addiction, we're able to then connect to this compulsive desire correctly. And in those moments when we have these urges, instead of being unsure what to do, we feel empowered, like we have a choice. We know exactly what to do when we have these urges. And we're able to think through that choice in a rational way. And what this does when you do it repeatedly is it actually disconnects those addictive neural pathways. And then you train your brain, you rewire your brain to deal with that discomfort of the urge. And you get to embrace real, true freedom from this problem and feel 100% in control of yourself every moment of every day. And then we don't even need to worry about urges. We don't need to worry about relapsing ever again, because we know if I have a desire, if I have this sexual desire, which will come, it will inevitably happen, no matter how much you try and resist this or get away from it or do your self-improvement or have therapy or meditate, it will happen because it's compulsive and the mind's involved in a psychological, emotional dependency on a mind, mood-altering experience. Because of that, we're going to have the desire. And when we know how to deal with this desire, it's no longer a problem. But we got to start off by, absolutely accept that we're going to have the urges. But then instead of letting the addicted part of the mind take control of all these different questions, let's just deal with the urges correctly, know exactly what to do, and embrace freedom. So there's a lot there, but hopefully that's useful. What I'd recommend to anyone is, if you are experiencing all these questions going on and you're unsure on what to do, get in touch. I will be able to help you. You can book in a free one-on-one confidential discovery call with me. There'll be a link in the description. Or you can get started by watching our free training video, which talks more about the Beyond Compulsion method, which Mary Portis taught me. Thank you so much for watching or listening to today's episode of the Help Us Here podcast. I really hope this will help give you more clarity on how addiction works. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.